So welcome, silent people, to the launch, the Zoom launch of the Stromness dinner by Peter Benson. Very proud, obviously, to be publishing a novel by Peter as a novelist who's, I would hope he won't mind me saying, been round the block. He knows his way around the novel in terms of plotting and characterization and everything else. And we've done our best to produce a really nice book for him with a really nice cover. And I know that Ailey Warrock is somewhere in the audience. So thank you, Ailey, Orcadian artist, for the cover design. I actually had a phone call from another of our authors who's we're publishing next year, saying, I don't want my old cover anymore. I want one that looks like Peter Benson's. That happened this afternoon. So as I said, Peter, he knows his way around the novel. And I know that having heard him talk about this novel on the radio, on Radio Orkney, he's keen not to give much away. And I don't know whether he's going to give a lot away tonight, so I'm not going to give very much away if I can help it. It's about a lot of things. It's about place, Orkney. It's about also Bermondsey, which is pretty much the other bookend of experience of living in the UK, I think. And if it's about anything for me, apart from place and food, it's kind of affirmation of love, which I'm now coming to understand is one of Peter's things in his novels, and it's all sorts of love. So it's phila, there's a little bit of erotic, and there's even a little bit of agape as well. But as I say, I don't want to give too much away, so I'm going to hand over now to Duncan Mclean, who runs, as you all know, a very famous and fantastic deli in Stromness, and the author himself, Peter. And let's see what the two of them have to say between them. Thanks very much again for coming.
Thank you, Mick. Well, actually, here's a funny thing. The person who runs the deli in Stromness is Gavin Warnock, who is Ailey, the artist's father. I run their arch rival in the town of Kirkwall. So it's a particular pleasure for me to be here tonight, introducing Peter's book. And what's more, having my shop mentioned in that very book. Take that, Mr. Warnock. He's a friend of mine, really. He won't mind me saying that. Okay, welcome to this launch, the first book launch I've ever done from my kitchen. As I say, I run a deli in Orkney, in Kirkwall to be exact. It's called Kirkness and Gorey, and you can find it on pages 75 and 143 in the novel. The shop's been going for 161 years. This is the first time it's ever been mentioned in a novel. So, you know, we're gradually getting our name out there. In another 500 or so, we'll be rivaling Harrods or somebody like that. I'll tell you about meeting Peter and how I ended up in this very honourable position of introducing him tonight. I was working in my shop one day 4 or 5 years ago, when a man walked in and complimented me on the music I was playing, which was late 1960s Miles Davis, quite weird stuff. And not everybody likes the music I play in my shop. So as soon as this guy came in and claimed to be enjoying it, I thought, oh, careful, Duncan. You might end up being on friendly terms with some wandering stranger, which is not always a good idea. I just thought I'll be careful. But then, all was to no avail, because he went and picked off the shelf a very obscure and very expensive bottle of sweet red wine from the south of France. And I knew this had to be friends with him. You know, Miles Davis and expensive bottles of wine. I was just going to get on with this guy. He then nearly wrecked a beautiful relationship by claiming to be a writer and telling me that in one of his novels, one of his many novels, 9 now, I think, he had named all the ships of a retired sea captain off after Miles Davis tracks.
I don't know. I don't know.
Neither do I. But always skeptical, I thought, well, there's not that many novelists wandering into my shop. I better read the novel he mentioned. So I picked it up, read it, and absolutely loved it. And I very quickly gobbled up just about all of other Peter's other novels as well. I love the humour. I love the economy of his narration, and I loved his way with words above all else. It's a great honour and a pleasure for me to have known him for quite a few years now, and above all to be hosting this evening's event. Peter and I are going to talk for 20 minutes, half an hour, something like that, and then we'll open it up for questions from everybody else. So I'm going to start with a very obvious question, Peter. We are at one end of the United Kingdom, the kind of civilized end up in the north here, and you are from Kent, which I've never been to, but I believe it's at the very, very, very bottom end of the United Kingdom. So why would somebody from Kent want to write a novel set in Orkney?
Garden of England, Duncan. I should say that, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. I should say that Duncan doesn't just run a deli. Duncan is in his own right a distinguished novelist. Just the deli's a sort of part-time job for him, really. You know, this is the man who discovered Irving Welsh. You know, first published Irving Welsh. You know, he's you know. But anyway, why did I write a novel about Orkney? Is that the question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why
okay.
do you have to mention Irving Welsh? That's my other question. Leave him out of it.
Well, you know, just I'm contextualizing you, mate. I'm always on the lookout. I was living up in Orkney, as you know, and I'm always on the lookout for a landscape. I always treat to start with a landscape is always my sort of first character, and after knowing Orkney for sort of 2 or 3 years, it had got its hooks into me, and I thought, why not? I'd read a lot of Orcadian novels, and I thought, yeah, this is a landscape that needs to be written about. I also wanted to be the first person to write a book set in Orkney that didn't mention selkies, which, as you know, are women that turn into seals or vice versa, I think. And every single novel or every single book set in Orkney has to mention these bloody things. So, and I got away with it. I know you run an organisation called Selkie Watch, don't you?
Yeah. I'm also a proud member of the Silver Selkies.
Are you?
Yes, it's a wild swimming group, or swimming as we call it here in Stromness.
I've seen them off the pier at Stromness in subarctic temperatures, having a dip.
That's it.
But that was, just got it hooked into me. I just wanted to write, and it's always a bit of a challenge to write about a landscape that's not. I mean, I've never written about Kent, which is where I come from, and I've never written about Devon, which is where I'm staying at the moment. But it's, I like the challenge of writing about a landscape that I'm just visiting, that I'm just passing through, if you like.
Well, listen. When you lived in Orkney, you actually lived on the island of Edy, which is about 20 miles north of where I'm sitting now, 20 miles northeast of Stromness. So you didn't actually live in Stromness. No. And you didn't write a novel about Edy. Do you think writers shouldn't write about their neighbours and immediate family and own back garden? Do you think there has to be a bit of distance? Yeah,
I mean, you know, if you value your skin, you shouldn't write about your family. Definitely not. And definitely there should be some distance. I mean, Edy is mentioned in the book. You know, I mean, the characters do visit Edy. It just, I mean, Stromness became the sort of, I don't know, it was just a way into Orkney. You know, if you read the book, I'm not going to give anything away, but you know. It's also such it's such an easy town to write about because, you know, it's so beautiful and so photogenic and whatever.
One thing I liked about this novel, and I think if you if you're from Orkney or if you live in Orkney a long time, you get used to people coming and writing newspaper articles or phoning magazine pieces or even novels where they rhapsodize about the magical sunsets and the unique mystical beauty of the Orkney landscape. And very often it seems to be a regurgitation of things they've read in George Mackay-Brown books or other works by earlier writers. And one of the things I liked about your book was that it's narrated by somebody who knows absolutely nothing about Orkney and virtually had never heard of it before they ended up having to come here. And so there's no preconceptions and there's no stereotypes about Orkney. For me, tell me if this is what you were aiming at, it's actually a more accurate picture of Orkney than one that is presented by many writers who have lived here for many years.
Yeah, that was the that's the sort of heart of the artifice in a way. I mean, I needed to, in order to get into in order to write a book about Orkney, and I'm not an Orcadian, I'm from Kent, and I need to find a way to present the place that was convincing but didn't hopefully upset, or not upset, because I don't know what the word is, but I just needed to find a way to write about Orkney without being an Orcadian. And the easiest way to do that is to pretend to know absolutely nothing about the place, and that's why I chose this character. Who's never been further north. I think he's been to. He went to North Wales when he was a teenager, and that's all. That's as far north as he's ever been. So it just sort of like gives you a completely blank canvas. So when he visits, for example, the Ring of Brodgar, he doesn't look at it as a Neolithic monument. He looks at it as a rockery. And the same with Skara Brae, when visits this sort of Neolithic village, he just relates it to the Flintstones. He doesn't relate it to anything. He just thinks it's been made up by a farmer one day. He doesn't, and why not?
Is that narrative approach or point of view approach something that you've admired in other writers? Or if that's too specific a question, I mean, which other writers do you admire who you think might have influenced you in writing this book or any of your other novels?
I don't know, really, it's difficult. I was thinking about this the other day. I've been more influenced by songwriters than novelists. I mean, there are novelists who I admire who have, I think, maybe had some sort of effect on my style. People like Richard Brautigan, for example. I mean, he was the first novelist I really got into when I was 14 or 15. Kind of like almost sort of, I felt he sort of gave me permission to write in a way, because he just let it out there. He didn't plan, he didn't think about what he was writing, he just went for it, But no, I think I'm more influenced. I'm novelists and poets as well. I mean, people. I was thinking about Robert Frost the other day, and what he used to say about sentence sound. For me, it's all about making poetry out of prose. That's what I try to do. Which is why if people have said in the past, I don't write, as Benson hauls his cliched characters through another hackneyed plot. It was one of my favourite crits. That, along with he writes like Enid Blyton but without the style. But I just like making sentences that sound like song. The plot comes later. Does that kind of answer your question? Or
Not really, but it's very
well,
interesting. It's very interesting,
well,
Peter. I'm glad we ended up with all that.
okay,
Good. I like it.
that's all right.
But funnily enough, Richard Brautigan was the kind of gateway novelist for me as well. When I was, I don't know, 15 or 16, my English teacher at school handed me Trout Fishing in America and said, "I think it's time you read this."
Right.
And it was exactly the right time for me to get into that world of adult literature, but also off-the-wall literature. You know, it wasn't carefully crafted, it wasn't conventional, it didn't follow the plot lines that might have been classically recommended. It didn't. It drifted in and out of realism, and
It's funny. I picked him up the other day and tried to read some, and I can't read him anymore. You know, it was obviously something that I was in. You know, it was a phase I went through. You know, a bit like you know, snake bite. You know, snake biting cigarettes. It's like, yeah, Richard Brautigan.
Speaking of writers, is it true that the character of the French lieutenant's woman was based on you?
It was.
Can you give us some background to that for people who don't know?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that, Duncan. No, we were living in Lyme Regis when I wrote my first novel, and Fowles, John Fowles, the author of French Lieutenant's Woman, amongst others, lived up the road, and I sent him a copy of the draft of the first book that I wrote, first novel called The Levels, and he was really kind to me. He liked it, and he gave me a puff for the first edition. But then he gave me a job working as his gardener. So, and then his wife was very ill at the time, and she stopped driving. So then I ended up driving him around. So basically, I was John's gardener and chauffeur, and general factotum for a couple of years. Yeah, so got to know him very well. I mean, he has a reputation for being an irascible old fart, but actually he was really nice bloke. He was very kind to us and very generous. He was just very, very guarded his and so, but he'd written The French Lieutenant's way before he met me, Duncan. I had nothing to do with that. You know that. But yeah, go on.
Well, Fowles was somebody who certainly took the role of the writer, or the position of the writer, extremely seriously. You know, if I say he took himself seriously, that might seem like I'm being critical. I don't intend to be, but he didn't really go around taking the mickey out of himself and his books.
Oh God, no.
And I just wondered if you thought, not in relation to John Fowles, but just in relation to fiction generally in the age we're living in, if there's still a place of importance for it.
For what we do?
Yeah.
I think there was an Italian football manager who said that football is the most important of the least important things. And I think he's wrong. I think writing novels is the most important of the least important things. If it was important, and if what we did made a difference. I know this is a controversial idea, you know, and a lot of people would argue, and I know I've got a lot of friends who would argue against this, but I you know, if what we did made a difference, we wouldn't have Brexit, Trump, Boris, Putin, Bolsonaro, Scott Morrison. We wouldn't have the you know, rampant climate change, would we? You know, we would have, you know, the pen isn't mightier than the sword, you know. We kind of like fiddle at the edges, I think. And I think that it's a lot of writers like to think they make a difference, but I think they think that maybe just to sort of bolster their own egos. I don't know. What do you think?
There was a quotation in an essay I read last night. The essay was called "The Inuit Discovery of Europe: The Orkney Thin Men,
Okay.
Preternatural Objects and the Re-enchantment of the North." And the quotation was, "It's hard not to conclude that Orkney, as well as being a real place, has long since become an imaginary archipelago lost in a sea of texts." And the irony is that the professor who wrote that actually stole that particular piece of text, that aperçu, from an Orkney writer and literary historian called Simon Hall. But what I wanted to say was, maybe it's easier to see this because we're living in a wee island. For anybody who hasn't been here, it's about 20 miles across each way. That's the mainland of Orkney. And then there's a scatter of wee islands in the sea around about. Total population about 23,000. It's maybe easier to see it in such a small community. But if you think of a writer like George Mackay Brown, his picturing of these islands, and particularly Stromness, in a series of novels, stories, and poems, has really created the image of what Orkney is, not just for people who don't live here and have maybe never been here, but even for the people who live here. What we see as important, what we recognize as Orkney, has been enormously influenced by a reclusive novelist and poet. So
I suppose it's how you define importance, you know, isn't it? I'm thinking of importance as being something global, maybe. I don't know. Whereas Mackay Brown was thinking of it, you know, how many times did he ever leave Stromness? You know, going to Kirkwall was an adventure for him, wasn't it?
yeah, he didn't like to do that.
No. And who can blame him?
Yeah, I'm a great believer in that adage, think global, write local.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I mean, I have to say, Peter, every book of yours has got an incredibly intense awareness of where it's set. I mean, when you say landscape, in Orkney terms, that might lead people to think you're going to talk about the beautiful rolling hills and the clouds coming in over the sea, but it's not that. That's not how you evoke a place. You're kind of right on ground level, talking about grass and reeds and puddles and hedges. It's a really
abandoned farm machinery.
Yeah, that's your constituency, abandoned farm machinery.
It is.
You made it your own.
I don't do with flowers, you know.
No, but seriously, tell us about how you evoke a place. Well, on the back of this beautiful edition,
isn't it great? Yeah, yeah.
Covered by Elaine. On the back, there's a blurb from somebody called Duncan Mclean.
I know,
and it says, Peter Benson has the miniaturist's eye for the tiny details that bring grand themes alive. And I think that's one of the things I like about what you do. You don't talk about the grand themes, you talk about the tiny details, but somehow from that, our reader's imagination extrapolates the big important things in life.
I don't know. I just keep my eyes open all the time. I don't miss. I just trained myself not to miss things, you know. And I suppose after, you know, I never plan a novel. It just sort of one of my first agents said she said never try and plan your novels, Pete, because you're an instinctive writer, and I've always followed that. advice, you know, as soon as a notebook comes out and I start to have to write things down, I think I'm lost. It's all got to be in there churning around. So I mean, I don't know how I do it. I just do it, you know. I mean, apart from finding a landscape, the second thing I have to do is find a voice, which in the case of this book was this builder guy from Bermondsey, you know. And once I found his voice, it's almost like becoming it's almost like method acting. It's method writing, you know. I just inhabit this person for the period that it takes me to write the book, and then I, you know, as Laurence Olivier said to Dustin Hoffman, "Why don't you just act, dear boy?"
For anyone who hasn't done it up to this point, I strongly recommend having a look at Peter's own website. There's a bit of the usual boring stuff about the names of his books, but there's also lots of other interesting stuff like reviews he's posted on Amazon. But there's wee films and photographs. You've got a very strong visual sense there. And there's also a little bit about your skills as a basket weaver. And in fact, anyone who does make it to Kirkwall and Kirkson-Gorey, we have this old message bike dating back to the early 1950s with Kirkson-Gorey written on the side. The old basket was falling to bits and eaten by woodworm, and Peter crafted a completely new one with us to fit into the frame of this old bike. It's a masterpiece of weaving. So before I maybe open this up a bit, is there something in common between the skill, the organic nature of growing a basket like that from a lot of wool wands and the way you craft your fiction?
Only that it's got to be. I mean, I've never let anything go unless it was perfect, or in my eyes, perfect. You know, so I'd rather burn a basket than sell you one that's not right. And it's the same with not. You know, I mean, I've published 11 novels, and I've written 22, and although I every now and again I have you know, a bit of a bonfire, you know, because if they're not right, they just go. I can't be doing with it, you know. So it's perfection, you know. That's the only link between the two crafts, you know.
Interesting. I thought the weaving in and out of all the different bits of reed or willow or whatever it was, that reminded me of some things you do with language in your fiction.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think we're stretching the mess for a bit here, you know, because we're with making a basket, you know, you follow a pattern, you have to follow a particular weave, and you can't deviate from that, you know. Whereas when you're writing, I like to go off at tangents. You know, if you were to go off at a tangent, if I'd have gone off with a tangent when I made that basket for your bike, you know, it would just look ridiculous. You know, you have to follow very, very strict sort of, you know, rules and parameters when you're making a basket. So, I mean, I get the sort of, I see where you're coming from, but, you know, I think you're probably wrong.
Okay. More than likely. It did happen once before, Peter, so maybe it's happened again. Right, I have to follow.
You were wrong.
Yeah, I was once, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, what happened?
You told me I was. I remember it very clearly. Okay, I have to follow strict parameters too, because we've been talking for half an hour, and I would like to invite other people to ask some questions now. Now, Sarah, how are we going to do this? We've got some questions popping up in the chat here. Should I kind of pick one out and tell you who it is, and then you can unmute him? Is that how we should do it?
Yeah, so I was going to say, so lots of people have asked the questions in the chat, but I think it would be really nice if people were able to ask their own questions. So Duncan is going to call some names out and I'll unmute you, and then you'll be able to ask your questions. You can also unmute yourselves now, but we'll do it whoever Duncan calls, because I think that's going to be the easiest way to manage, so we don't get people talking over.
Okay. I won't read all the comments, because some are just telling us what they're having for their tea. I am having, by the way, Peter's recipe fish pie.
Oh, it's an excellent recipe.
It's on the Soundworks website. I'm going to test it out. In fact, what are you answering?
I'm having mini cheddars, the prince of baked snacks. Lucy, hello.
Hi, Peter. You said you have to hear the voice of your characters before you can get stuck in. Given your very strong visual aesthetic, do you also have to see them? Literally, do you get a sense of the physicality of your people?
Thank you for calling them people as well, because when I used to teach creative writing and I always talk about, you know, writing characters, I used to say, well, you know, you don't write characters, but characters are people that lean on gates with a bit of straw in their mouth. You're writing people. What was the question? Oh yeah. No, I don't. I try not to describe people in my novels in too much detail, because I'd rather people do the people that are reading work it out for themselves. I might say what colour hair they've got and general sort of body size or something, but other than that, I try and keep the descriptions to a minimum. You know, I'm not Michael Moorcock. You know, I don't do that. He was very good at, you know, describing is very, you know, perfect detail. You know, the size of their nostrils and stuff. You know, nah. So no, in answer to your question, sorry.
But somehow a vivid visual picture of the main people in your books does stick in the mind. I find after reading.
Yeah, so, I know what they look like. I mean, we're making a little sort of a little 4-minute movie, which is a sort of Sarah can describe it better. It's a sort of trailer for the book, and when we were talking about who to cast in the part, especially of Ed the Builder, I kind of like, as soon as I was shown some sort of some shots from Getty of sort of fairly sort of you know, hunky blokes with sort of like 5 o'clock shadows just not working. You know, I know what he looks like, but I can't really tell you what he looks like, if you follow me. You know, if I saw him on the street, I'd be able to say, oh, that's Ed, you know.
This would be an ideal moment to ask Susan Flett from Orkney to ask her question. It's very relevant. Wait to be unmuted, please, Sue.
Hello.
Whoa.
Hello.
Hi.
I asked a few questions. I think the first one I asked was actually, has anybody talked to you about the film rights? Because I really want it to be turned into a film. I spent the whole day reading it, and I'm completely in love with Ed and Claire, and you know, I don't even like dogs, but I like his dog. And so I just want, that was my first question. Is it going to be made into a film?
Well, that would be if it could. Well, it'd be brilliant if it was. I mean, I have a theatrical agent. I mean, he's not a theatrical agent. He's an agent who deals with theatrical matters. He is quite theatrical as well. But anyway, yeah. I mean, who knows? Selling film rights. I've sold film rights to half a dozen of my novels, and we sell the rights, and it goes down the road.
I know they sit around for ages, and then they never happen or they do happen. But
Mm.
I'd love it if it did.
We made one. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we made one of my first novel way back in the day. For what was then HTV, based in Somerset. That was great, but no, I mean, it'd be great if it happened. I'll let you know.
Can I ask very quickly as well, have you ever actually read a novel about packaging?
About packaging? No, but I used to work with someone he was completely obsessed with packaging. He worked in packaging, and packaging was his life. And no, so he's but that character is kind of based on this guy.
Oh God, he sounds awful.
He was. Yeah.
Sue, I'm going to ban your second question, the private one, on the grounds that it gives away too much of the plot. So,
all right, ban me.
So, I'm going to go back, please, to Leslie Ann Gittings next. Wait to be unmuted, Leslie, and then off you go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, Leslie. How are you?
Hi, Peter. How are you?
Very well. How are you?
Oh, it's very nice to hear you. I was very lucky to direct Peter's Levels, his film that he made from his wonderful first novel. And he was a wonderful person to work with. And we worked with some great people, didn't we? The wonderful people from the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School.
Yeah.
Anyway, it seems like a long time ago, Peter. One of the things that's really interesting for me during this lockdown time is how books are so incredibly important to everybody now. People are reading so much more. I certainly have been, and rediscovering things that you've had in your library. And I just really wondered how this was reflecting in your writing and whether it had inspired you in your choices about what you might write about, because writers seem to be ignoring lockdown, but I sort of feel that lockdown is going to change us all.
Well, I actually sort of lucked out when it came to lockdown, because a week before the March lockdown started, a week after it started, I travelled to Tasmania to stay with my son, who's got a chicken farm out there, and as a result, I got stuck there for 3 months. And for 3 months, I became an egg farmer. And as a result, Tasmania, in the same way that Orkney did, got its kind of hooks into me. And I got an idea for a novel based in Tasmania. So in sort of in a roundabout answer to your question, for me, lockdown worked out very well. With this new one coming along, I mean, the thing is, for writers, well, for a lot of writers, I don't know, can't speak for all writers, but we spend most of our time sat in our rooms, just locked down anyway. I mean, when I'm here, I'm either here or in my room or up at my allotment, and that's about it, really. So it's kind of it's had for me, apart from this sort of Tasmanian thing, it hasn't had a huge impact on me. Does that answer your question, Leslie?
Well, sort of.
Yeah, go on.
But I just wondered, if you were writing, would you include things that the things that COVID have brought with us, or would you ignore it?
I don't know. It's almost like it's too early. I'd rather let these things sort of percolate down, and it's. I mean, I've already seen. I've just finished a book called English Passengers by Matthew Neal, which is set partly in Tasmania, and he's just written or published a book which is set. I think he lives in Rome, and it's basically his lockdown diary set in Rome. And I think there's going to be there's going to be a great sort of like, you know, tsunami of books about lockdown. And I think you've got to be careful with, you know, dealing with stuff that's, you know, happening or just happened. You have to let it sort of pass and mature and wait until you know exactly what how it's, you know, it's what its larger impact, what its greater impact has been on the world before writing about it.
No, I think you're very wise. I think that's it. But the trouble is, it is affecting us all, and it will affect all their futures. But it'll be interesting to see what happens, especially in America.
I mean, I broke my rule by, you know, in Stromness Dinner. I do mention Brexit quite a lot because the characters he voted, you know, to stay in, and his father voted to stay to leave. So they have an argument at one point about Polish builders, but yeah, you've just got to be so careful, you know, because it can just.
Well, I shall be fascinated. My grandfather was born in Tasmania, so I'll be delighted to see how you get on with Tasmania.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A writer friend of mine, James Meek, published last year a wonderful book called To Cali in Ordinary Time, which was a novel about the Black Death sweeping across Europe and Britain. So it took him 600 years to digest the impact of the Black Death. So maybe, Peter, around half a millennia from now, you could give us your co-review. The next question I want to ask, the next one chronologically, is from Ella Duffy, the wonderful poet Ella Duffy, I suspect. Are you there, Ella?
I'm here. I think I can be seen. Ooh, yes. Hello. Trying to remember my question now. Hello. Oh, that was it. So you said that you were influenced by songwriters, and I was wondering if you had a mixtape for the book, who would be on it?
Oh, stop it. Ella. I should say that Ella is my youngest daughter, and she's one of the finest young poets to have emerged in the last 100 years from the UK. She's got a book out next. When's it out? In about a week's time, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
Anyway, if I had a mixtape, well, Ed listens to a lot of that sort of Ibethan sort of chill out music, you know.
Okay.
She says in the book, I don't know if you've read any of your dad's books, but anyway, he does play a lot of he plays that in his car. He doesn't listen to what does he say at one point? He doesn't listen to that sort of you know, meatloaf sort of music that you'd expect him to listen to. So yeah, he listens to a lot of that. But yeah, if oh God, what a question.
Sorry, want to throw at you.
Hey?
Want to throw at you. You can, you can.
You did, didn't you?
Yeah.
I don't know. He just listened to all sorts of stuff. A lot of Tom Waits he'd listen to.
Okay.
Yeah, because he's quite gravelly.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Okay, and he'd listen to, I don't know what else he'd listen to. Anyway, have you got back? Where are you? Are you still in Batsy?
Yeah.
Right, just having a chat now.
Having a chat. Yeah.
Are you going down to Kent?
Yeah, going down to the Garden of England.
Excellent. Well, have a good trip.
Imminently. Yeah, thank you. Congrats. Got it here. Here we go.
Hey.
Thank you very much, Ella.
My girl. Or one of them.
The next question I just think I'll read out because it is Oliver Benson, no relation presumably, asking, is Peter eating many cheddars?
Yeah, that's my son in Tasmania.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Is he not there?
Well, maybe he is. Are you there, Oliver?
You there, Oz? He's gone.
Yeah, hello.
Hey, there he is.
Yeah. Hello.
Mrs. Benson.
Oh, yeah.
Yay. Hey, Beck. All right. How you doing, mate?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
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 What's going on?
So, do you have a question?
Mini cheddars, Dad. It's a controversial choice. Mini cheddars during a book launch.
Well,
I'm not sure I'm down with it. No. Yeah.
Just degeneration. Go on. What's happened to your hair?
Anyway, that was my question. It's not. Oh, Dad, it's 6:30 in the morning here. I've just got out of bed. Yeah, there's no. I didn't have a deep, book related question. I just wanted to chat about snacks.
Okay.
Anyway, carry on if you want.
Okay. Nice to see you, mate.
You too.
That was all. He's a chicken farmer.
Well, you said he was a chicken farmer. You said you worked on an egg farm. So I want to know which came first, the chicken farm or the egg farm?
Well, he keeps chickens and collects their eggs. Yeah.
Avril Silk had a question. I'm not sure how in depth this is. I'm going to ask it, and then Avril, if you want to expand, then come in and expand away. Is it all over for Ash Brittle as a location?
Oh, Avril, hello.
Hello, Peter.
Well, this relates to two of my novels, which were set in a small village in Somerset called Ash Brittle, which is where I lived many years ago. No, it's not, Avril. I do have something. I do have another one. I was writing a sort of trilogy, an Ash Brittle trilogy, but I got waylaid by Orkney. But I will return to Ash Brittle one day and finish the trilogy. It's half written. It's just in a box somewhere. Don't know where, but it's somewhere. Well, I do know exactly where it is. It's down there. Yeah. No, I shall return to it, Avril.
I can't hear Avril. Can you hear Avril, Peter?
No, I can't.
I don't know.
Okay, I'm afraid we better move on. Sorry about that, Avril. Mick Felton of Seren has got an interesting question.
I'm sorry. I feel like I'm taking over when other people should be asking questions. But it was the thing you said, Peter, about music and songs being an influence. And it struck me, well, one thing, that a lot of the chapter titles sound a little bit like song titles or album titles. So we've got things like, if Jesus had a gun today, if Jesus had a gun, he'd still be alive today. And so a chapter called Fat Naked Pagan Weirdos. And
oh yeah,
that was one of the things that attracted me to the book, actually, is the way you encapsulated what was coming in the chapter in the title of it. But I also wonder, because you talked about visual things as well, whether there are any film influences.
I always yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that, because I was looking at the book the other day, and one of the chapters is called Observatory Crest, which is a Beefheart song. There's a Captain Beefheart song. There's quite a few. What was the other one you were saying about? Not the Pagan Weirdos. What was the other chapter you mentioned?
Jesus and his gun.
Oh, that was I saw a. As you know, a lot of cruise ships come into Kirkwall, Stromness, mainly Kirkwall, and I did see a huge American walking through Kirkwall one day, smoking a cigar, and he had a T-shirt on which said, "If Jesus had a gun, he would still be, he wouldn't have died," And it's just anyway, what can you do? I mean, I always think, when I'm writing, I always write in a very sort of filmic. I try to write in a sort of filmic way, purely for sort of, because I'm thinking I want to sell this as a film, because then we'll sell lots of copies and we'll you know, make lots of money. But no, seriously, I do. I mean, I think things through filmically, and yeah, film has quite a big influence. The way I write dialogue as well is I write dialogue as I would be writing a screenplay.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. Yeah.
Mm.
Sticking with the film theme for just a minute, and you've maybe kind of answered this already, but Ruth Francis had a film related.
Ah, it's another of my children. Ruthie, where are you?
Hello. Can you hear me? Hey.
Hey. God, that's interesting. Yay. How many copies have you got? Oh, look at that.
Yeah, baby.
Oh.
How's it going? Yeah, Ella actually stole my question, so I had to think of. There's been lots of questions popping up as this chat's gone. It's been really interesting. But I asked who would play Ed in a blockbuster movie.
Tom Hardy.
Hey. But I also was Ed.
Obviously, I mean,
Ed, can I ask?
It might be a bit old, but yeah, go on.
Really?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Yeah. Oh, there's Molly.
Yeah, there's the cat. Is he really? Is he too old? Was Ed based on anyone in particular as well?
No, not really.
No one I know.
no one you know. I mean, I know that Dave and Richard. That's my son-in-law. For those who don't know, but they have a sort of. Well, it's not a building company, but no, there's nothing to do. The cat wants to go out, Ruthie.
She's all right.
But no, nothing to do with Dave or Rich at all. Although there was the business about. I remember when Dave was saying about how he'd sign painted the van. That stuck in my head, and I used that in the book about it being a great advert. You know.
Mm.
Yeah, but other than that, nah.
Can you think of any other actors though that would play Ed?
Not really. No. Why can you?
Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy, exactly. Yeah.
Jude Law.
Jude Law, bit old.
So
no, the thing is, he's in his 20s, so I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. What?
You wondering how many children he's got?
I'm just kidding.
No,
what?
Visually in my head, he's got a bit of the James Corden about him.
James who?
James Corden.
Okay.
But you couldn't afford him, I don't think. He'd be even more expensive than Tom Hardy. Maybe you could get Oliver Hardy.
Yes.
Or all the Hardy boys.
James Coburn.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
So there's one more question, and I think we've got 1 more minute left of our allotted time, so it's perfect timing, actually. And that is Alison Miller.
Okay. I've unmuted myself. While there's all this family talk, I would just like to put this in here. Can you hear me? While there's all this family talk, I would just like to put in here that my brother used to deliver messages on the Kirkness and Gorey bike. So
thanks.
That's one thing. But I wanted to ask, you set your books in various different locations. And I wanted to ask, to what extent did you come up against Orkney dialect, or did your character tangle with Orkney dialect in the book?
That's a good question. And it's something when I showed an early draft to Duncan, I did wonder about, because I thought, how am I going to cope with this? And in the end, I just thought, right, just don't even go there. Just write, because he's Ed, the guy, the builder from Bermondsey, is writing the book, so he can't hear. He can hear the dialect, but he wouldn't know how to spell it. So that would be my excuse.
Right.
I mean, when Duncan writes his column for the Orcadian, he writes as he hears it, and he does it perfectly. I couldn't go anywhere near that, you know, so I just don't, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Arcadians don't know how to spell it either because there's no standard or orthography for it. So.
Exactly.
So you're okay.
I wouldn't. It was something that I did think about, but not for long. No, because I just knew that if I even thought about going there, I'd have a ton of trouble down on my head, you know. So
yeah, okay, probably.
Step away from the dialect.
Yeah. And I'd be leading the charge, so you're safe.
Sure.
Thank you. And just one thing I want to say to Sarah, I'm looking forward to getting my review copy as well, because I'll write a review for the Arcadian when I get it. So
thank you, Alison. Look forward to that. Okay, well, it's a wonderful coincidence that we've run out of questions at exactly the same moment we've run out of time. I mean, I'm sure we could linger a wee bit longer if anybody wants to. Oh, I better show you the fish pie. But Sarah or Mick from Severn, or Peter yourself, does anybody want to say a few final words before we close?
No, I'm fine. I'm trying to pie though. I hope it works out.
I just want to say thank you very much, everyone, for coming and for all your great questions tonight. Thank you for Peter for answering them, and for Duncan for leading the conversation as well. I think everyone has really enjoyed this evening. We've had
Sarah.
Had some tantalising a sneak at the book, even if we haven't had an extract. So, oh, Duncan's got the fish pie there.
It's not very. Peter, can I put it under the grill for 5 minutes? It's not very brown and bubbling. It's a bit.
Yeah, you need to put it under the grill, mate. You really need to do that. Okay, off you go. Oh dear, you just can't get the staff.
Mick, is there anything you wanted to say?
Well, just to say you've been watching the Bensons, and
yeah,
it's been really fascinating. And that's your next project, I think, is a television series called The Bensons. I mean, if the Osborns can do it, then anyone can.
Well, I haven't seen my brothers yet, but you know, just wait.
Here, one of them's got a dog. Okay, it's been great. Thanks very much, Peter. Thanks too to Duncan for steering us through it so beautifully. And thank you all for coming. This is the bit where Sarah normally says it's available on our website. It's going to be available in all good Arcadian shops, including Delicatessens, I believe. And thank you again for coming. It's been a pleasure. And we'll hope to see you again for something soon. Bye-bye.